Hello, everybody. Hey, this is part two, talking about sin and temptation and how to overcome it. I may have to do a part three. We'll see how far I get today. All right, so my name's John Fenn, CWOWI.org. Because this is part two, I want to just get right into it. Last week, I shared in the visitation I had with the Lord about the man standing in the sphere of light and how he started thinking about sin and that temptation, and how there was like a triangle, a door opened up, a pathway opened up in the sphere, and a demon went in, hopped on his shoulder, started talking to him. And the man sinned, then he regretted it, he repented, and the demon quickly got out because that door closed, and the man was once again surrounded in light. During that visitation, the Lord explained to me that man does that. He has a habitual sin that happens about every 2 weeks in his life. And the Lord started teaching me about the way demons work. And I shared last week from James chapter 1 about, especially in verses 13 through 15, how God is not the one tempting us, that we are drawn away of our own desire for sin and then enticed, and how demons do the enticing. And how when that desire and the enticing conceive, there's a gestation process, and then sin is eventually birthed. That action takes place, that sin takes place. So we pick it up there, and I want to go back to the beginning in Genesis chapter 3 to explain some of this. In Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, we see that Satan is tempting Adam and Eve. Now, we are told in 1 Timothy 2:14 that Eve was deceived in the transgression, but Adam was not deceived. Adam knew what he was doing. He had been first created. He was walking with the Lord in the garden. He had the whole world and the whole universe explained to him. He named the animals, etc., etc. Eve was tricked into it, was deceived into the sin. And how did that happen? Well, Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 5 tells us this. Satan came to them and said, "Has God said?" And she said, "Well, yeah, he said we can eat any tree, but not of the knowledge of good and evil." And he said, "Oh, no." He said, "You can eat. Nothing will happen to you. You won't die. You'll be like him." So before Eve ate of the tree, Satan presented lies to her. And so this is the thing to understand, that you look at most every sin in a person's life. I'm talking about problem sins, okay? I'm just making a general statement, but in general, a lie precedes the sin. A lie comes before the sin. Now, not if you're a victim. I realize if you're a victim, that you were sinned against, you didn't believe a lie ahead of time. But again, I'm narrowing this. I'm talking about this visitation where the Lord was teaching me about demons and the way they work. And that's one important thing to understand, that a lie, talking about individually now, a lie will come to a person and then the sin will come. Give a for instance. Okay, let's take food as a means to ease the pain, the emotional pain that somebody feels. They had a rough day, and somewhere long ago in their childhood, in their teenage years, maybe they had a rough upbringing. Maybe they're, no mom, no dad, something like that. Maybe there was something happened, and they went to food to find comfort. Ice cream always made them feel better. Cake always made them feel better. They'd have a rough day at school. They would rush for the food. Somebody was angry. They were abused. They were neglected. They found some pain, and so they would go to food. Okay, the lie right there is that food brings comfort. All right, so a person believes the lie, and then they act on it, and for them, for the rest of their decades, perhaps, they believe the lie that food brings comfort to their emotional pain. And so as a result, they can't lose weight. They try to diet and everything else, but they keep going back. The reason is they never dealt with the lie. All right, let's talk about boys and girls. And, in my generation, an older generation, before the internet, there were magazines. And that was the big thing, teen boys and everything were looking at magazines. Men had whole cultures of just trying to stay, G-rated here on this. But you understand what I'm saying. And so there are a whole generation of men who believed a lie about women and their role in society and life and marriage and everything else. And so men grow up thinking nothing about looking at pictures of naked women And women grow up thinking, exposing themselves, thinking that was their purpose in life. Well, that's a lie. And so a man grows up and maybe he gets addicted to looking at that. And what was the lie? Well, somewhere in there was a lie. It's like this is what women are for. This is what we do. This is obeying the urge within me. And so they believe the lie. And so then the sin comes. So to get out of it, what I'm talking about today is you have to unbelieve the lie. You cannot grasp the truth while holding on to the lie. In my last example, we will say, let's rearrange it. Let's get a biblical view of men and women and a woman's femininity and how that should be cherished. She has been given the gift of being able to carry a child in her womb, to conceive and carry a child in her womb. That elevates women. That elevates them in our minds. And so there is respect and there is honor for femininity and their place in creation and everything else. Just as we respect man for his place, but for men to think of women properly, to think of them about how God created them and the abilities that they have that men do not. That when you go back to the beginning and Adam, he came to the conclusion after looking at all the animals, saying, hold it, there's not a helper here for me. There's nobody that fits me. And so the Lord, once Adam realized he needed a helper, the Lord put him in a deep sleep, performed an operation out of his flesh, formed Eve's flesh, and brought her to him. And actually the word helper means, in the Hebrew, it means one who has what the other one lacks. That's what the word helpmate means. It means a mate who has what the other one lacks. And indeed, the Lord did not create Eve as a standalone separately. He took from Adam part of his soul and part of his flesh to make Eve, so that literally Adam, who had been whole before, now had half of himself in this other person. And that's why Genesis chapter 5 and verse 2 says that in the day they were created, he called their name Adam. Genesis 5:2. In the day they were created, he called their name Adam. And so when you renew your mind to that man, then it removes the temptation. Even if a woman dishonors herself by exposing herself, then the man can deal with unbelieving the lie because he is replacing the lie with the truth. All right. Same thing with food. Same thing with money. Let's say somebody's got a gambling habit, or let's say they have some other habit that is addictive, whether it be a drink, a pill, gambling, food, whatever, but there's something addictive there. So you go in and you look at the truth. See, Jesus said this in John 8:44. Talking to the Pharisees, he made this comment towards the end of the verse. He said this. He said, when Satan speaks a lie, he speaks of his own. All right? When Satan speaks a lie, he speaks of his own. Satan has no one to agree with. Remember that sphere of light that I was talking about last week in that visitation? Satan is out there. The demons are out there. There's no one to agree with them. They have no power over you unless you agree with them. You know the power of agreement from Matthew 18, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in their midst. Amos chapter 3, verse 3, when God is confronting Israel, he said, can 2 walk together except they be in agreement? Amos 3:3. Can 2 walk together unless they're in agreement? Satan has no one. He's on the outside of that sphere of light. That your spirit man has Christ in you. You're recreated by the Spirit of God. There's no opening there for the devil except through your thought processes and what you're thinking on, what you're looking on. You and I open the door because we have our desire for sin. We have to know, your weakness. Know your weakness. And that way, when the enticing comes, you can battle it because you know your weakness. All right. This is going to have to be part 3 because this is just part 2. Because next week I want to share some practical things. So having said that, I'm going to end it right here, and I'm going to just go with this so far that you realize that it's your will. Nobody stands before the Lord and says, the devil made me do it. The devil entices us, but we are responsible for our own lives. That's one of the biggest, most important things, is to realize, stop blaming things on the devil. Stop blaming your thoughts and your condemnation, your fears and your worries, everything about your salvation, all the way through what you did last night. and just realize you and I are responsible for ourselves, and there is great grace. All we have to do is acknowledge that and repent, and the Lord is great to forgive us. All right, on to part 3. John Fenn, CWOWI.org.